Bruce, I want to touch on something that's been referred to as the labor market paradox. I think the last time you were on, we only scratched the surface because we were looking at the universal workforce model, I think, in quite some detail. But one of the things that intrigued me about when you were speaking at a recent event in London, Bruce, was around some of the demographic challenges that Western, and this is generally a problem, it seems, for Western labor markets around demographics and a demographic deficit or a demographic drought. It's referred to various ways, but in short, Bruce, Western labor markets, particularly European Union and the USA, have not been producing enough people over, I think it's around a 60-year period. It really started to decline around the 60s, 70s. What seemed to be saving some of those demographic problems, Bruce, was inward migration into Western labor markets. And as most keen observers will appreciate, there's been a lot of restrictions and regulations around that. So you've still got this fundamentally huge problem. And I don't think a lot of policymakers and businesses are actually alive to this, not through any fault of their own. I think it's just sort of just crept up upon them. But when we look at this problem, Bruce, this demographic problem, how concerning how concerning should that be for businesses that operate in Western labor markets that typically draw upon a talent pool or worker pool in Western labor markets? And also, how concerned should policymakers be about this particular problem, Bruce, in your view?
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack there. If you think about when baby boomers were named baby boomers, it's turned out to be the incredible phrase that's whoever thought of that, because before then, people had more babies than they have been having during the last 20 years. But since the baby boomers, people have been having less children. So it really was a defining moment of the peak of childbirth in the developed world. And I think what's happened now, as we think about developing or developed is truly a past tense phrase now from a population size. So literally every developed country are now starting to go backwards in terms of their size, their population. And as you think about that from a demographic perspective, and I always say to people, just Google demographic pyramids, and it's such an awesome site. You can literally select a year, select any country in the world, and it will show you the breakdown of their with the people that are living in the country at that point, by age group. And in the ideal world, what you want is in a growing population, it's kind of like that. But most countries now is the opposite way. Except for China, because of the one-child policy. And I always amuse myself thinking I'd love to have been in that meeting when somebody woke up to the fact that was hurting them, and they were like, "I think it was your idea, that one-child policy." No, I think you suggested that. So the blame game on that, I think, would have been a fascinating conversation. But also realize now the damage of that. As I said, you're about, in Tokyo, you order Uber Eats and a 90-year-old guy staggers up your steps to deliver the food because there's just no kids there to do those jobs. So as you think about that and those demographic shapes, organizations need to be very aware of that. And it's a beautiful picture way to think about it for two reasons. One is our workforce is shrinking, or our potential workforce, people that can actually become a workforce, is a smaller group. And typically most organizations, if they're in there selling a service or selling goods in consumer space, the consumers are shrinking as well. So the two answers for that. The one is the answer for the shrinking humans is to allow more people into the country. And the other one, to get away from the shrinking consumer base, is to export. Those two things are being attacked right now. Perhaps I don't want to get too political by use of attack, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean by that.
I do.
They're being restricted, and there's big changes afoot with tariffs and lack of immigration, etc. So organizations need to be thinking, in a perfect world, if I was the CEO of an organization, I would get my board together and say, right, just paint a picture for me on this big wall in this room. Imagine a massive whiteboard the length of the room. How are we getting work done right now? Show me where the humans are. Show me how long they've been with us, how much they're costing, what their skills are, what type of contract we have with those individuals. Are they an employee, a contractor, a freelancer, or the end of some service provider? Paint that picture and say, okay, that's how we're getting work done today. And now, of course, we need to add in the AI element of that. What percentage of that work is being done by agentic function? Okay. Now, let's look at the CEO's statement to the board and to the city of what the CEO and board are saying, telling people you're going to do in the next 2 years. What does our organization architecture and structure need to look like to achieve that goal of 24 months from now? So now you've got a plan, because we need to move from the left-hand wall to the right-hand wall. And how are we going to do that? And in those conversations, if one of your answers is we need to hire more people in Palo Alto, then somebody needs to have a serious word with you, right? So, it gets people to think differently. So, well, actually, we're going to need a number of, let's call them FDEs, the forward deployed engineers, which is the hot AI role at the moment. Where are those people in the world? We don't know. Well, you better find out. Let's scan, all this information is out there, labor market analytics, skill set analytics, LinkedIn itself has all this information. So where should we be thinking about putting that type of work in the world? And I do think there's it's a bit of, I'm fantasizing a bit, but I do think we're going to get more and more to countries and regions being known for skill set than they are right now. So I think we've always, certainly in Europe, if anybody says, well, where do all the cool design people hang out? You're going to say Scandinavia, probably because of IKEA, but there's some truth in that. If you think about cybersecurity, you want to go to Israel. Think about the voice to text, all of the development now, you go to Egypt. So there's certain countries now that are developing certain skill sets. China invested hundreds of billions of dollars into parts of South Africa to build AI capability. So, okay, that might be a happy hunting ground just around the corner. So armed with all that information, now you can actually have a true strategic workforce plan to move from left wall to right wall.